If you're interested in street photography and you want to get a camera specifically for the job, here's the chance to find out which one of these cameras is the right one for you. The Ricoh GR3, the Fujifilm X100V, or the Fujifilm X Pro 3. Hi, Peter Charles here of Hooked for Life Photography, not fly fishing, changing things up a little bit. Today we're going to look at what is the best street photography camera out there, but what is the best one for you? Not for me, not what my opinion is I'm going to go through the advantages and disadvantages of three cameras. The Ricoh GR3, this one is the X version with the 40mm equivalent lens, 26.1mm. There's also a version with the 28mm lens, which I wasn't interested in, but you might be, so be aware. It comes in two flavors. This is the Fujifilm X100V, and we have the Fujifilm X Pro 3 with the 18mm lens on it, and I also use the 50 or the 35. Those are the three lenses I use in street photography with that camera. So, first off, what's the story here? This is my gear. I paid full price for it. I bought it brand new. I don't get any deals from any manufacturers or anything like that. It's, I'm just another photographer, and I have to pay full price for my stuff. So this is what I actually use. X100T before this one, and I had an X Pro 1 before this one. So I've had a lot of different cameras over the years, and I upgraded both of these because I love them so much. I've also had cameras similar to the GR3, and this is my little Olympus TG5, and I've also had a TG1 before that. So I'm quite good with this style of camera as well. I'll use them interchangeably. So let's get into this and look at how these cameras work best for street photography. And now, of course, we could all run out and buy a Leica, if we got the money. But if you don't have money for the Leica, or you don't want to spend that much money, then these cameras are probably your next level in terms of great street cameras. Now, for the record, you can do street photography with any camera. It's probably the least equipment dependent form of photography out there. If you got a camera that you can press the button and something happens, you can use it for street photography. You can use your phone. You don't require anything in the way of specialized equipment. But if you have equipment that's designed for street photography, it makes life a lot better and a lot easier. So that's what we're going to look at. And I'm not going to get into the technical details. Oh, this one's sharper in the corners than that one, and so many megapixels. I'm not interested in that. There's plenty of good videos out there and good articles that cover all that stuff. So if you want to compare the technical aspects between a GR3 to an X100V, there's lots of good stuff out there that'll tell you what it is. I'm going to take it from the approach of using this equipment. And I'll be talking about the various advantages and disadvantages of all three of them. And, that will help you come up with a better idea of, okay, that thing is not important to me, but that one is. So maybe I should go this way versus that way. So that's how we're approaching it. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the GR3, the Ricoh, first. This is a really small camera, and I like to use it handheld, just basically like this. One hand. It's a very tourist-looking camera. It's not going to intimidate anybody. You walk around like this all day, nobody's going to pay any attention to you if you're in a tourist area, or even if you're just walking downtown somewhere. If I walk downtown Hamilton with this, nobody's going to pay any attention to me. So that is one huge advantage for street photography, is it's small, it's innocuous, it doesn't attract attention, and you do not look like a photographer. You look like Joe Tourist. And that has great advantage if you want to, move without attracting attention. You can easily shoot with one hand, which is great. It's light enough. And the great thing, it has IBIS in it. It's the only one of these three cameras with IBIS, in-body image stabilization. With small cameras, that's important because you can easily get excited, press the shutter button too hard, and get this rotation going, and you end up with a blurry picture. I've had to learn to avoid that problem using cameras like this, where you can get into issues with, that rotation. The IBIS takes care of this. Now, I've seen a couple of articles that said it's worth 2 stops, it's worth 3, it's worth 4. I don't know where it is, but so let's say somewhere between 2 to 4 stops worth of correction in image stabilization. So that's very cool. That's very helpful. It's also being quite compact. It's really pocketable. It's the only camera of these 3 that you really can stuff in a pocket. That's a great advantage. It's a very simple camera to operate. So, you can go up to a person and say, can you take a picture for me? Just press that button. And it doesn't look like it's worth stealing. I can give it to my wife and say, here, take a picture of me. And, right there. Nobody gets intimidated when they use this thing. So it's something you can hand to somebody else and have them take a picture. But there's some things to consider about it that are downsides. This is a fixed screen, and there's no viewfinder. Now, you could put a viewfinder on hot shoe if you wanted, but suddenly this no longer is pocketable with a viewfinder on it. So you're working with the screen only, and if you've worked with screens only, you'll know that in bright sun they can be difficult to see. Well, this does have a little gadget which is helpful. This is the screen brightness, and you can see how the screen changes in brightness. And that top bright level actually works in bright sun. I've used it in bright sun plenty of times, no problem. So I'm very happy about that. However, this comes with a huge downside. This is a small camera, and it has a small battery. And as a consequence, you go through the battery very quickly, even more quickly when you have that bright screen going. So you are chewing up the battery like mad. You either get in the habit of turning it on and off frequently, or you carry a bunch of extra batteries. Now, one of the good things is it uses USB charging, USB-C connector, so you can connect it to your car and charge it while you're driving, connect it to a computer, or connect it to one of those battery packs and charge it back up again. So at least it's easy to recharge. The controls are quite simple. You're not going to confuse people with the control layout. You can operate it quite easily and quite quickly. You do have exposure compensation in this dial. So typically I'm going to be using it in shutter priority mode, and I'll just adjust my exposure with the compensation dial. I like to have high shutter speeds to freeze action, and then let everything else, the ISO and the aperture, go drift on its own, and using exposure compensation right here to control my exposure. That works great. It's very simple to manage. The other thing I do, and you'll notice that I'm in black and white here, and the reason for that is that I am got it set for JPEG and RAW, so I get a black and white JPEG, a color RAW, and it means my viewfinder is black and white, which is great. You have great modes in this camera for color and black and white. We've got lots of options to pick from. The thing I would suggest, though, is that you play around with those options a little bit to see what you get for results, because some of the results I didn't care for. So I wouldn't go out on a shoot and then find out you don't like the results. So the RAW, you get the raw color image, and then your JPEG is whatever you want, whatever option you picked. I find the standard colors on this not so great, but then since what my normal workflow is, the black and white JPEG is just a scratch image. I use it just to judge the image before I take it. I also use it when I get it home and I'm just doing a review of images to go, I like that one, I don't like that one. When I'm doing a very quick purge of the no good shots, I'm working with the black and white JPEG. But once I have decided on which photos I want to actually work with, and go to the color RAW and then work with them. I do the same with these two cameras as well. Both of them are set up exactly the same way. black and white, JPEG, color raw, and that's how I operate. So this camera will give it to you. So will the other two. And, you can work in that fashion. It's very efficient. But the only other thing I can mention about the camera is that you have to be careful of dirt getting in here. When we talk about a pocket camera, well, it means it's in your pocket, which is lint, dust, dirt, yesterday's sand from the beach, old gum wrappers, whatever else is in there. So when you turn this on, you see how that lens extends? Well, when it does that, it creates momentary low pressure inside the camera, which sucks dust through this gap around here. It's sucking dirt in. Now, it does have IBIS ultrasonic cleaning, which gives a sensor shake to get the dust off of it. But I do recommend that if you're going to put it in the pocket, get one of these aftermarket lens caps. So that will fit snugly. It'll keep the dirt out of that groove that goes around the lens. And when you put it in your pocket, you don't have to worry about it. And then you just take this off when you want to take a shot. Now, what's interesting, if you have an X100, the lens cap for the X100 fits as well. So if you don't mind it saying Fujifilm on your Ricoh camera, you've got a lens hood. If you've got a X100, it fits. So either way, I would recommend putting a lens hood on this thing to keep the dirt out, and you're good to go. So it is a great little camera. I think the key points is it's small, it's pocketable, it's unobtrusive, and it has IBIS. On the downside, you're going to have to be careful of dirt. You're going to have very short battery life, and the color JPEGs, not the best. You'll get better results out of the Fujifilm. But other than that, it's a great little camera, and I love it. I use it quite a bit. So let's move on to the X100V, which is probably the queen of the street cameras, affordable street cameras, compared to, let's say, come on, the strap. There we go. As I say, it's probably the queen of the affordable street cameras. It's a classic rangefinder camera. It is bigger and heavier than the GR. It is not going to fit in your pocket when you have the hood attached. You can get away with it if you don't have the hood and the filter adapter attached to it. However, be warned, this is a weather sealed camera. The V version is weather sealed, but if you don't have a filter on the front, it's not weather sealed on the lens. So the front of the lens is not sealed until you put a filter on it. So that increases the bulk of this considerably, and is now no longer pocketable. Plus you have to buy yourself a cheap plastic cap because your lovely metal one no longer fits. So those are the little things you have to worry about with this. Is, one of the things is this is the way it's going to look if you want it to be weatherproof and you want a filter on it to protect the front of the lens. So you do increase the size. As far as the camera goes for street photography, obviously full manual suite of controls. The GR I'm always working on auto. As I said before, I'm usually at shutter priority, and I just leave it there. I don't bother trying to use the manual functions on it too fiddly. But this, you've got a full suite of manual controls. I can, change this around very easily. Classic controls. I mean, my ISO dial is right here. Very easy to change. I've got aperture ring with an auto. You can see the A there for auto. And you can control your aperture manually, just like an old rangefinder from years ago. It works like a Leica. It's great. There's nothing you can't do with this that you can't do with the Leica, basically, in terms of controls. It has the flip out screen, which is really great. So you can hold it in this fashion and shoot with it out and, head down. Classic TLR type shooting, waist level like this. It works beautifully. Now, some of the other things about it, you've got this fantastic hybrid viewfinder. And with this switch at the front. Let's see if I get into the light so you can see it. There we go. little switch right there. That enables you to change between electronic viewfinder and optical viewfinder. Both have their advantages. With the optical viewfinder, you can see around the frame, so you can see what else is out there, not just what's inside the frame. With the electronic viewfinder, you're getting your exposure information. You can actually see your exposure, and you can see exactly what the lens is seeing very, very clearly. And the electronic viewfinder on this is wonderful. It works great. So you don't have to just use the screen. And one of the nice things about this is when you turn it on here, there's a sensor, and you can see it will, I'll turn it off and on. You can see it knows when it's up to your eye. When it's not to your eye, you get the LCD screen, but when you put it up to your eye, you get just the viewfinder, and that includes either the optical or the EVF. And in the optical viewfinder, you get all your exposure information just like you would with the EVF. So this is great. Your options on how to compose your image are superb. You've got all sorts of different ways to do it. You know, you use the tilt screen. You can, use the viewfinder. Whatever you want to do. It's great in that respect. The exposure compensation knob is nice and stiff, so you're not going to move it accidentally. Now, I've got a wrist strap on it, but I normally don't use it with a wrist strap. I normally use it with this neck strap, and being a Peak Design, I can flip them on and off, so it's not a problem. The beauty of that is I can work it like this, I can work it like this, I can work it like this. You have the options, shoot from the hip, shoot from the waist level, but using the screen, shoot from up here in classic phone, approach, or bring it to your eye. It's however you want to work, and that's the beauty of this camera. It's got this great flexibility and how to use it. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the X Pro 3 because it has a lot of the same features as the X100, except it's interchangeable lenses. It has the same kind of hybrid viewfinder. The screen operates a little differently. It just flips down. So you can see it like this. It just flips down. Not everybody's going to like that screen. The idea behind it is they don't want you to chimp all the time, and I don't chimp normally anyway. So you're not going to sit there and go, oh, let me pull this viewfinder down and let me see my images. No, you don't have to do that. It's meant to be left up, and you've got this lovely little display here which tells you what you've chosen for your film simulation. There, got it out. The film simulation. It works great. Okay. The idea, the benefit of this is interchangeable lenses. So I normally go with these three, the 18, the 35, and the 50. That's my usual kit. You could also use the 27, and the 23 would be a good inclusion in this as well. But I've got those covered with these two cameras. So for me to buy the 27 and 23 would be a redundancy. So I'm going with focal lengths that I don't have represented here, which is the 18, the 35, and the 50. And that gives me pretty well all the coverage I'm going to need for street photography. Where I tend to use this camera the most is where I don't know what focal length is going to work. I'm going into a situation where I really don't have much of an idea as to the working conditions of the street. In other words, is it really crowded? Is there a lot of people? Are they spread out? How is it going to look when I get out on the street? Do I need more reach? Do I need more coverage? I don't know. I take this and I get out there and I pick the lens I want to use, and then I go from there. So that works great. Now, I haven't talked about autofocus yet because I want to deal with that in one subject. These cameras have face detect, tracking. You have AFC, AFS if you want to use it along with manual focus. The manual focus on this camera is wonderful. On the older versions, it was awful because this ring was very, very sloppy and very easily moved. This one's got resistance in it. So if you want to use it on manual focus, it works fine now. Of course, you've got the manual focus rings on your prime lenses that you can use as well. The other thing I've done with my old X Pro 1 is I used adapters to mount Voigtlander film primes on here. worked lovely. I was very happy with it because the X Pro one had very, very slow autofocus. So I might as well use manual focus lenses and use zone focusing on them, which I did. You can use back button focusing as well, where what I normally do with back button focusing, especially with the X100, is I will choose a working distance. I will back button focus for the working distance, and then I don't touch anything, and I just use zone focusing from that point on. And I used to use zone focusing a lot with the Voigtlanders, where your depth of field goes from, let's say, 5 feet out to 15 feet, and I would just work in there, and I would be working on manual, so my shutter speed and my aperture stayed the same. If I wanted variation, auto function, I would let the ISO go where it needed to go, and that worked great. Now, let's talk about the autofocus on the Ricoh, because this has something called snap focus. And you can pick your distance, and when you press on the shutter button, it locks in on that distance. So you've got zone focusing, but you're picking your zone focus, where you want the midpoint in your zone focus to be. Oh, that's fantastic with street photography. So if you're on a very crowded street, you might set it at, I think it's 1.5 meters it gives you for an option, or 2, 2.5, 3. Depending on what working distance you're expecting to be at, you can set it. And it's very easy to change. You just press that in, just scroll over to focus, and now you can pick your focus, and you can put a snap focus or auto or whatever you want. So that's very handy. The other thing you can do is you've got a movie button here, and the video on here is, so you might as well reset that to being your snap focus button, and that works great too. Now, autofocus on this camera is not the best if you're going to use the autofocus tracking, and you can see it hunted there. Let me set the focus over here, bring it back to here. That one locked in okay, the previous one hunted. It doesn't like low light all that well. So sometimes it'll hunt, sometimes it'll snap in okay. Now, try it again. See that hunt? Okay. Generally, these two will be better in low light than this one. So if you're going to be using this camera in low light a lot, I would recommend, looking at these as well. And I think these sensors do a little bit better for noise in low light or ISO as well. This is very good. I'm not knocking it. I think these are marginally better. So if you're going to go out and shoot with autofocus, the snap focus on this is wonderful, but these work just fine. They've got face detect, now works quite reliably. Tracking works reasonably well. The older versions, the X Pro one was horrible. As I said, I didn't bother. I put manual lenses on it. The X100T could be erratic. So these models have cleaned up a lot of the issues with the older models. And so if you've heard some criticisms about X100 focusing, the V has cleaned most of that up. The only thing that has remained the same is the speed hasn't improved very much. But other than that, this camera is much, much improved on autofocus performance. And this is light years ahead of the old X Pro one. So if you're going to go out in the street, bottom line is what's most important to you. Being inconspicuous, fit in a pocket, simple to use, run on automatic, the GR. Classic rangefinder, simple to operate if you want it to be simple, but you've got a full suite of controls. And it's not too big, it's not too intrusive, and it's got just a great flair to it. I mean, it's just a fantastic looking camera and a fantastic camera to use. So it is heavier. You're more likely to use it with a neck strap, but you have all these options on how to use it. And when we come to the X Pro, well, this camera is really about interchanging the lenses because it's essentially the same as the X100, except with interchangeable lenses. So if you need the ability to change lenses because you're dealing with different scenarios, or maybe you're using this camera in multiple different ways and you need it to be flexible, you need to put wide angles on it or portrait telephotos, then this would be the best choice of the lot. It is the heaviest and is the most noticeable. And you definitely will never fit this in a pocket, unless maybe with a 27 millimeter and a big cargo pocket, but that would be about it. Otherwise, it's not going to fit in pockets. It's not that, inconspicuous. So that's basically the way I break this down. The reason why I have all three, because I use them in all those different ways. But if you're only going to go buy one, look at what's important to you. Is it tiny, fits in a pocket, inconspicuous? Is it full suite of controls, multiple ways to use it, and really cool? Or do you need the flexibility of interchangeable lenses along with the cool factor? You can get the cool factor with the X Pro 3 as well. So that's basically it. I mean, they're all great cameras. They'll all do the job for you. It's just a matter of adjusting the camera to your working style. So keep that in mind. Cheers.